Hello and welcome to Plants. All right, today we're going to begin plants with vascular versus non-vascular. All right, scientists divide all plants into two large groups, bryophytes and tracheophytes. Now, when you think of trachea, what do you think of? Like your throat, okay? So your throat would be a passage, and so you'll see where that fits in. All right, so bryophytes are plants that don't have specialized tissue. They don't have an ability to transport water. They don't have roots, stems, leaves, and they reproduce by spores. Versus tracheophytes, remember, think of that throat idea. They're vascular plants, so they have tissues that transport water and nutrients, and they use seeds to reproduce. All right. This right here, this deciduous tree, that is a tracheophyte. And then the mosses and lichens and things like that, those are all bryophytes. Okay, here's some more examples. Ferns here have transporting tissue, so do these flowers. Trees, all of these are vascular plants. And then you can see these structures, and notice they're all near the water. This is in water. This is all near the water. It has to be. It doesn't have a means of transporting water throughout, so it has to be near or on the water so that it can, non-vascular plants can get water. All right, so the study of plants is called botany, and this, normally we think about the roots and the stems and places and parts of a flower like that, but we have this structure called a rhizome, which is an underground stem. And I put these on here, lilies, because they're very common here in the South. And you can dig them up, and they have these rhizomes underneath. In fact, that's how they reproduce. So my lilies that I have in my yard now, I have a lot more of them this year than I did last year. And in a couple more years, I'll have tons, because these rhizomes just continue to grow, and then they send out plants along the way. Most ferns have the rhizomes. All right, so when a seed becomes a plant, it's called germination. And it's not germinated until it becomes a plant. It's still a seed. And typically, we say that roots are below ground and shoots are above ground. Here's a good picture. So here's the shoot system. And this is all the above ground part. So you have your stems, your leaves, your flowers, buds, all of those are your above ground. That's your shoot system. And then the roots, you can either have a tap root or you can have fibrous roots here. We'll look at that in just a minute. But you can see they have this vascular system. All right, so vascular plants, remember the tracheophytes, those, and they transport water and nutrients. There's two different types. We have the xylem, which moves water and nutrients from the ground upward in the plant. So what structure would it originate with? The root. So it's going to come in through the root, and it's going to go up through all the way to the tips of the leaves. And so water transports through xylem, and phloem carries the food. Now, one way to remember this is phloem, food. Sounds like they both start with F, phloem, food, and xylem, water. So WX, if you know your alphabet, YZ, but WX, so W and X, xylem's transporting water, phloem carries food, and so phloem's carrying it down to the other parts of plant because it's making the food in the leaves, and xylem's carrying it up. You can spray the leaves all day long on a plant, and it's not going to get the water that it needs. It needs to go from the roots. All right, so here are some roots, different types of roots. So you have this fibrous root system, our grasses, things like that. When you pull up a piece of grass and it's got all those roots that are hanging all over the place, that's an example of a fibrous root system. These are excellent for erosion. That's why we plant grass. I mean, of course, we plant it because it looks pretty, not realizing that what it's really doing is stopping erosion. So that's why they put that on the sides of highways and stuff, not just so that our highways look beautiful, but so that they'll stop the erosion, because these roots form such a strong bond in there. And then, of course, There is a taproot system. This looks like it's a carrot. Carrots are taproots, and so when you eat a carrot, you're eating the root. And but dandelions have these. You'll pull deep into the taproot, which is why when you just pull off this part up here, it grows back because it's got this wonderful root just hanging out underneath. All right, let's look at the stems. This job of the stem is to transport between the plant's root and the leaves and the flowers, and also it supports the leaves and the flowers, holds them up. There are cases where plants will store some food in there. All right, now we've looked at this already, but let's go ahead and take a look at it briefly again. In the leaves is where photosynthesis is carried out, and the underside of leaves have these structures called the stomata, or in plural, they're stoma, on those undersides. And this is where carbon dioxide and oxygen are exchanged. So carbon dioxide is either taken in for photosynthesis or oxygen is released after the process. And there's these little guard cells that control the opening. They look kind of like donuts all the way together. Well, that's a really bad example. All right, so here are some guard cells here. Here's our xylem and phloem, this vascular tissue. It looks like veins. It looks like veins. Just like our veins transport blood throughout our body, the xylem and phloem transport sugar and water. So here are the xylem cells here, and here's the phloem transporting throughout and then here's your stoma on the underside of the leaves. All right, so here's the breakdown. Here's where we're at so far. We're at plant. We did vascular and non-vascular. The non-vascular, remember, they don't have any roots or stems or anything, and they have to be at or near water, very near water. And then vascular plants, we can break those down between gymnosperm and angiosperm. So let's take a look. Well, we could break this down one more. Let's go ahead and take a look at this, and then we'll revisit the angiosperm broken down between monocot and dicot. All right, so let's compare angiosperm versus gymnosperm. Gymnosperm, we know the prefix is what? Naked. Yes, gymno means naked, and sperm means seed. So gymnosperms are vascular plants that produce seeds that are not covered by a fruit. So they're called naked seeds. Versus, oh wait, here we're still on gymnosperm. And they're often called cone-bearing plants or conifers. All right, so cones, conifer. Examples, pines, firs, spruce. These are gymnosperm. So when we see these, you put your Christmas tree up. That's a conifer. That's a gymnosperm, naked seed. All right, now let's look at angiosperm. Now, one easy way to remember, I mean, at this point, you know the prefixes for gymnosperm, so you're good with that. But how I like to remember angiosperm is, of course, my name's Angie, and I love flowers. I love them. So it's easy for me to remember that it's the angiosperms that are the flowering plants. So, but by definition, they're plants that produce seeds that are enclosed in fruit. All right. And ones you're most familiar with are grasses, deciduous trees, shrubs. These are all angiosperm, this apple tree here. All right, we're going to study the structure of the flower. We're going to get into some detail with that in a lab in class. So keep this in mind and go back and reference it. All right. Monocot, remember in that chart, we had gymnosperm and angiosperm. So when we broke down angiosperm, scientists like to break it down into two different groups, monocot, dicot. At this point, you know mono means one, di means two. Well, this cot part is talking about the cotyledon. We just shorten it. Or you can call it a monocotyledon and a dicotyledon. That's completely appropriate, but we do shorten it typically and call it monocots and dicots. And that cotyledon is a seed leaf. All right, so that's what it's talking about. The cotyledons are classified as monocots with one seed leaf. You need to know the examples: grasses, corn, palm trees. Dicots have two seed leaves, two cotyledons, and examples are dandelions, lima beans, carrot, oak trees, and we're going to look at some comparisons here. All right, again, the number of seed leaves. All right, the monocots have this parallel leaf vein, and the dicots have this net. So we're going to look at that vascular tissue. We're going to look at that leaf structure. Monocots occur in threes, and dicots, the flowering parts, usually occur in fours or fives. Again, we're going to look at those. In monocots, the vascular bundles are scattered. In dicots, the vascular bundles are radial. Okay, here's where we're getting to it. This is where they look lovely. Okay, so here are our monocots. Here are dicots. So here you look at, in a monocot, there's only one seed leaf, and then you can see in dicots, there's two of them here. And like I said, floral parts, dicots are in fours or fives, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And in monocots, they're in 3 or in multiples of 3. So instead of 5, you're going to have you're either going to have 3 or 6. Now here's where it's really, really easy to tell the difference. Here's this vein structure in the leaves. In a dicot, they're a net structure. So it looks, they're all over the place and they're like a net. Where here, think about grasses. When you look at grass, it has these parallel veins. All right. And then down here, when you look at the vascular bundles, the monocots are just randomly all over the place here. And then these vascular bundles in a dicot are in a ring structure. So just another way to be able to tell the difference, okay? You do need to know this chart. Whoops, whoa, boy, our time has flown by. Look at that. Plants are so fun. There's all kinds of other things to do with plants, like how they're adapted to their environment. And we talked about that already with that thick, waxy cuticle. So this layer here. And we'll look at some of those structures during lab. So you just have a marvelous day.